Have you ever heard that disconnecting from someone is selfish? Yes, this strong belief is ingrained in many people. But is it true? The surprising truth is that it is possible, and even necessary, to disconnect without carrying that emotional guilt that weighs on your chest. Imagine being able to make a healthy breakup that doesn't imprison you, where emotional release is accompanied by self-knowledge and strengthened self-esteem. What's more, find out now how this change can be the first step towards freeing yourself from toxic relationships and rediscovering your inner peace. Emotional guilt is a shadow that insists on accompanying those who decide to break up, especially when we carry the belief that hurting the other person is an unforgivable sin. Often, this guilt is born out of fear of breaking social expectations, of hurting those we love, or even of challenging cultural standards that impose on us the idea that giving up is failure. It is essential to understand that this feeling, although common, should not be the thermometer that guides our choices. When someone begins to recognize that guilt is natural, but not the main reason for staying in toxic relationships, a path to emotional liberation begins to open up. Imagine a woman who, despite suffering, remains trapped by the guilt of leaving the other person alone. This creates an invisible bond, an emotional attachment that weighs more than it relieves. Realizing that it is possible to act with self-love and respect, even if it means letting go, is the first step towards a healthy breakup. Practically, this means allowing yourself to feel the guilt, but not submitting to it. For example, writing a letter to yourself, acknowledging the fear and pain, can help externalize this feeling. Over time, this exercise in self-knowledge means that guilt stops being a prison and becomes a gateway to emotional autonomy, preparing you for the next stage: healthy detachment. Detachment is often mistaken for coldness or selfishness, but it's actually a profound act of self-love and respect for yourself. It's like taking care of a plant. You can't give it everything and forget about yourself. Knowing how to say no when the weight of others threatens to consume your own energy is a clear sign of strengthened self-esteem and emotional security. A practical example: imagine a woman who always puts herself in the background to ensure her partner's happiness, neglecting his needs and desires. This behavior, however noble it may seem, is a form of self-sacrifice that compromises her emotional health and keeps the connection unbalanced. The key is to recognize that responsibility is not to carry the weight of someone else's happiness, but to take care of what is within your reach, preserving your peace. It's important that she sets clear boundaries and respects her own daily choices, understanding that this doesn't mean abandoning the love relationship, but rather building a more solid and fair foundation. When she learns to put herself first, the healthy relationship begins to flourish, free of guilt and dependency. A step that naturally leads to understanding the emotional bonds that make it difficult to detach. Emotional ties are like invisible ropes that bind us to people, even when we know that these ties are unhealthy. These ties can turn into bonds that feed emotional guilt, preventing true liberation. Understanding the origin of these bonds, often marked by emotional attachment, is essential to breaking this cycle and moving towards autonomy. Think of a woman who, despite knowing that a relationship is toxic, feels unable to detach because she fears loneliness or thinks she should keep trying. These feelings are the result of emotional patterns that have taken root in the past, directly interfering with self-esteem and the ability to see your worthiness for something better. Recognizing this is the first step towards profound change. She can begin to observe these patterns in her life, identifying when she is acting out of fear or guilt, and look for ways to free herself, such as therapy, support groups, or self-knowledge practices. This journey is not simple, but it is a fundamental process for achieving a healthy, effective detachment, opening up space for relationships based on reciprocity and mutual respect. Detaching from someone is not just an emotional act, it's also a daily practice that requires firmness and self-love. Setting clear boundaries is fundamental to protecting your emotional security and avoiding relapses that feed guilt. Imagine, for example, silencing notifications or limiting contacts to preserve your peace. These are small choices that strengthen your self-esteem and promote healthy disconnection. Seeking emotional support is another pillar that supports this journey. Talking to friends, joining groups, or even seeing a therapist are all practical ways of reinforcing the feeling that you are not alone. This support helps nurture self-knowledge, allowing you to recognize when emotional attachment tries to pull you back into toxic relationships. Finally, self-care cannot be left out. Dedicating time to yourself, whether through meditation, exercise, reading, or leisure time, is a powerful act of self-worth. Disconnecting is, above all, a gesture of courage and emotional liberation. And so each step on this journey reinforces self-love, opening doors to daily choices that respect your worthiness. After a relationship ends, guilt can try to pull you back, like an insistent shadow that makes it difficult to see your true value. But it is precisely at this moment that self-esteem needs to be rebuilt, recognizing that you deserve peace and respect. Allowing yourself this right is essential to break out of the cycle of emotional guilt and emotional dependence that so often imprisons you. This process involves choosing relationships every day that strengthen your emotional health, based on reciprocity and respect. Imagine yourself creating an environment where appreciation is constant, where your daily choices reflect self-love and true emotional connection. Reconstruction is an invitation to freedom, an emotional liberation that makes room for what really matters. Allowing yourself peace is a revolutionary act, a step that reaffirms that you no longer need to carry the weight of guilt for the end, or of attachment that no longer serves. When you position yourself in this way, you make room for healthy relationships, where worthiness and respect go hand in hand. And it is precisely this understanding that closes one cycle to open another, healthier and fuller one. Detaching from someone without feeling guilty isn't just possible. It's an essential act of self-love and taking care of your own self-esteem. Emotional guilt often traps us in stressful cycles, preventing us from experiencing healthy, toxic-free relationships. Now that you understand the difference between responsibility and self-sacrifice, you are ready to make daily choices that enhance your peace and emotional security. Think. Are you allowing guilt to dictate the pace of your decisions, or are you taking control of your disconnection, respecting your limits and your worthiness? Emotional liberation begins when you stop carrying the weight of bonds that no longer serve your growth. How about reflecting on which relationships really strengthen you, and which only feed the emotional attachment that needs to be left behind? So, what will you do today to rebuild your self-esteem and ensure a healthy breakup that brings you closer to what you truly deserve? And if you want to keep evolving and learning about self-knowledge and relationships, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's much more for you to discover and transform. Share your experience, doubts, or achievements in this process in the comments. See you in the next video.